Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So today, Graham brought along an old colleague of mine, Stuart McDonagh. Stuart and I used to work together many, many years ago, but since then, Stuart's gone off and set up his own organisation. We schedule it. So Stuart's going to talk to us all about scheduling stuff today.
Well, Stuart, welcome to the next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you, Graham. Appreciate it. And I think Kevin's being polite. I worked with Kevin, but I mainly learned a lot from Kevin as he was my line manager back in the day, way back when.
Wow, that must have been fun. I mean, clearly he would have had more hair, but was he always this kind of character that we know and love?
I suppose you look at it twofold. So having now had a career, you know what good and bad looks like, and then I suppose from Kevin's perspective, he has a son not much younger than I that's probably not in the naughty category like I, but has something about him, has a bit of personality, has a bit of charisma, and so I suppose it was easier for Kevin to sort of manage me and get the best out of me than others, I would say.
Well, I like people who are shall we say anti-establishment, because I see some of that in myself, and it's quite difficult if you're in a big company and you're an intrapreneur. If you've seen those types of opportunities all the time, you just run up against people who are not. And they'll do anything in their power to sort of like stamp down on you because it doesn't quite fit the mold for them. You're not really towing their line, and it basically, and it just irritates. Is that something you felt in your various corporate assignments?
Yeah, I would concur with that. It comes from where you come from. So both my parents are self-made, set up and ran their own businesses. Even back to sort of my grandparents, started in the inner city in Birmingham, sort of the Peaky Blinders era, through to moving themselves out to a better area into sort of Solihull, and then sort of got my mom through grammar school, and then my dad and my mom managed to run their own businesses successfully. Put myself and my sister through good education, gave us opportunities, but we understood the value of a pound. I think that was important. The challenge, as Kevin will know very well from having managed me and looked after me for 2 or 3 years, is that when you have that sort of ambition, that drive, that intrapreneur, as you called it, it's very difficult to slot into a corporate cog to be something and sort of do as you're told and don't pass go and collect £200 because you've seen how to do things differently and potentially better or worse, but you've just got something outside of the box that you've got to offer, and it's just how you sort of mold and shape that and can go forward with it.
And well, now, as Kevin mentioned, that you've started your own organisation, we schedule it now.
Yes.
What problem is that solving, Stuart?
That's a great question. Actually, the name is something that's come up quite often. So we schedule it. We founded the business, my co-founder and I, May 2020. Originally, with the premise, the problem of the backlog of appointments in the public sector, specifically the NHS. Okay. And I'll be quite honest, and I am quite honest and brutal with myself. Sort of naively set off to make a difference in the NHS from a personal perspective as somebody in remission for cancer, and having seen how brilliant the care and treatment is within the NHS and even on the private side where it's an extension of the NHS. Mm-hmm. But actually the non-care and treatment side is terrible. The booking, the scheduling, the appointment, the availability, whatever you want to call it, the 1950s-ness of it is still very much prevalent. And for me, it was a case of I foresaw that the backlogs were going to get worse and worse, which they have done, from dental to council backlogs. And it was like, could I come up with something to make a difference? And at the time, for me, it was something I wanted to do. It was a personal thing. I managed to assemble a very good team around us, get an MVP out quite quickly, and we sort of set off on the public sector approach to that, and failed. If I'm being perfectly honest, and I'm quite clear on that. We weren't successful in that vein, and as you sort of picked up with the name, we've since pivoted to become a services marketplace app, where we have found a white space. We have found an opportunity to provide both B2B and B2C, and hugely exciting for the business as we now have performed a pivot to go through a pre-seed funding round. Yeah. So we've had a massive journey this past sort of 3 months where we brought new people in that have given a different perspective and actually made us better. At the same time, we've sought outside counsel from advisors and investors, and actually we're sort of far more confident, bullish, the wrong word, but confident that we can have a truly scalable business now. And actually the name is one of those areas that's come up frequently, and we've got a couple of other names up our sleeves for the actual app that when it gets relaunched again, to move away from we schedule it, because as it says in the name, it gives the implication of one element of our three that we have now. Okay,
well, we'll come back to that, but I don't want to miss out on your experience with the National Health Service. But
yes,
just to give you a sense of a comfort, you're not the first person to go through that and come out the other side with this NHS sausage factory. Some years ago, in this business, I basically took a proposition to them, because one of the problems with appointments is that they were like pinging people's telephone numbers and they weren't there anymore. The telephone numbers were dead. And we worked out that something like £30 million worth of appointments were actually missed simply because they didn't have the right data. And we had a solution that we could say, right, give me your data, bang, we'll cleanse it and we'll tell you the ones that are not right. Then you follow those up with separate cards and all the rest of that to their home addresses, get the new number. Simple, you'd think. But it was like, you might as well have been talking to the wall. I mean, 30 million, drop in the ocean.
Yes.
Who cares? We'll have to do something to do that. And so it felt really, really frustrating. And, however we tried it, just in the end, we just, pass. We'll move on to somebody whose business we can help. But it was just something that was a really simple fix, but could potentially say, and actually, frankly, priced at a prawn cocktail. But the reality is, it would have saved millions of our money in the National Health Service. Yeah. So, I do feel, because I can sense that, that you came up with something that would definitely help them, I'm sure.
Yes.
But how did that, you call it failure, and it's really good to have failures in business.
Yeah.
How did that manifest for you?
Again, there's the naivety of doctors and consultants want to save lives and do right by the patients. And then you sort of replicate that oath they take onto the non-practitioner side of the NHS. And our safe harbour statement acts. My wife works in the NHS, so I know how many hours she does, but this is my own biased opinion. Yeah. We came up with a solution, for example, that could do something like the rescheduling flow, which sounds very simple, but actually is very difficult to do. You take the NHS's own app; it doesn't do rescheduling. How much money has been spent on that since its inception? Let alone doing all the other things it doesn't do that it should do. So we had a solution, having come from a patient perspective and a consulting background and worked in SaaS business, that we felt was better than the others, as well as some others that were very good in their own right. But to your point, it's the number of stakeholders and blockers and roadblocks you have to overcome to get anything done. And it can stretch from, I've got a budget over here for this, you need to put that title on the top of the proposal, through to, I work with these people, this is who you have to go and work with, you need to go through them, through to I don't want to do anything right now because I'm just sort of sitting pretty, don't put any eyes on me. So it's very, very difficult to access it, and it is truly who you know, not what you know. And they've gone on to launch accelerators and incubators and all those good things in the health service, but it's still it's a closed book, and outsiders in doesn't work. No. From my experience, and we had some great people advising us, and who've had very good stakeholder relationships. My background, not perfect. I've change management pedigree. I'm supposedly good at stakeholder management. I've moved into customer success more recently, so I sort of knew what we needed to do, and those around the team sort of concurred with that assessment. But still, you couldn't get through to make something, even pilot, even free of charge stuff to try and help save lives and help reduce backlog. So there comes a point where you can't keep pushing treacle uphill. You have to pivot, or you're going to die. And we prefer to perform the pivot than die. And sadly, that's the place we came to.
Well, I'm glad, because anybody listening to this who's in business will see an episode in their business where things didn't go quite well. What I like about you already, Stuart, and we've just met, is that you accepted it for what it was. It was a learning exercise, but you just couldn't get, even though you had a solution, you just couldn't get it to market. It just was never going to happen. So you pivoted. Take us from that moment to what you think you have as an opportunity now.
Yeah. So I suppose, and Kevin will know me from, I'm not an emotional person. I have mellowed slightly since getting married and having a son. The venom has slightly waned. But I see things very much, so data-driven in approach, but non-emotive in regards to how best to proceed. So if there's a better way and it's not my idea, fantastic, we crack on. And I suppose from a team perspective, I have better people working with me that don't have the CEO title, and that's key. I have a CPO who's brilliant in his respective field, but he's also sat in my chair. And if I don't use my 2 ears and 1 mouth in that respect to listen to what he has to say, there's no point having him around. And so I was very lucky because of who we managed to assemble. We've got a strong team, and we're able to perform a pivot. We tried, we failed, but actually what we had on the truck, what we had with the solution was sort of 2 out of the 3 things you need to do a marketplace properly, but in a different way. So if you think of most marketplaces, service or otherwise, it's pay-per-click, it's white pages, it's discovery. Some are good, some are bad. Some could be for freelancing, some could be for products. But on the services side, we already had a very good booking app in the App Store and Google Play. We had the resource scheduling and availability portal, the back end side, that could do up to public sector standard. We're on all the frameworks, million services a month, million meetings, appointments, whatever it might be. And then actually, if we combine that with a marketplace UX UI, we could transform the services marketplace offering through our app. So for example, you could have all of your meetings, all of your bookings in one app for every high value professional service. You wouldn't have to have 15 Calendlys on the go or 7 apps on your phone to do 7 different things, from the vet to the dentist through to speaking to your accountant or your trademark attorney, whatever it might be. But drilling down further on that, we actually felt in the current climate there was some key customer triggers that would draw people to a services marketplace that could offer all these things. And one of which is a change in personal circumstance. So it could be bereavement, it could be divorce. And therefore, you'd naturally need these professional services to help you on that journey. The second one is either a change in location or the owner of multiple locations. What I mean by that is people with sort of property holdings, property interests. And the third one is a change in your sort of your work life. And you could be doing a side hustle, you could become a contractor, you might have wanted to reassess with the pandemic. And therefore, all 3 customer triggers required a certain set of high value professional services. Now, some of those from a parenting side could be childcare through to professional nannies. Others could be, as I say, managing your property flow. But if you harnessed all of those as an aggregator and a consolidator, you can actually offer a true services marketplace that did everything it should do, not like a lot of the others, which are, as I say, pay-per-click or discovery only, and still lead you needing to do more. And we believe that there's in marketing speak, there's a beloved white space for that, which we've landed on.
If I was in this is just take it in the spirit it's meant, but if in the 1970s you'd have come up with this idea, there'd have been plenty of white space, but nobody would have understood a damn thing they're saying.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I'm trying to work out how I jump from what I'm doing now to a much better situation that has, frankly, an app on my phone and it kind of manages my life. Yeah. The bit that I'm not getting, and forgive me because I'm a bit dimmer than Kevin, which is quite easy to be because he's super clever. But I'm not really getting why the hell should I take it up? Why should I get it onto my phone? So tell me, given the kind of person I am, and I have all these different things going on, why do I need that app on my phone?
So if you're a service provider, if you're one of those professional services, then you want to maximize your available capacity.
Got you.
Right. So if you have a team, you want to make sure he, she, or they, that everybody's working to the maximum available billability, whatever it might be. So from the B2B perspective, you're maximizing availability, you're making the most possible revenue, you're optimizing from an operational perspective, and you are lean and mean, and revenue is high, and you reduce your costs. So it's a no-brainer in that column. From the B2C perspective, as a customer, you have one app on your phone that does everything you want it to do, from the self-service ability, the discovery, the pay, the interaction, the ability to reschedule, as I referenced earlier, all the way through to review and feedback.
Right.
but for every service that you use in your daily life, not just one. So if you think of like, if you own if you own a nice car, you end up with the car app from BMW or whatever it might be. And so you've got one app for them. You've then got your British Gas app. You've then got another app. You end up with 30, 40, 50 apps that do a single flow, a single transaction. If you had one app that could do all of them, because behind the scenes is the aggregator consolidator, that's massive saving to your time, and your time is precious.
Okay. So
okay.
Go on.
Let me take that a bit further, Stuart. You've got a life situation, for example, like there's a family bereavement. Are you saying that, okay, you go into the app and the app will therefore take you through the string of events, activities, etc., that you've got to do in order to sort that problem out? Right from, well, we need an undertaker, through to we've got to register the death, through to we've got to sort the estate out, we've got to sort out probate, all of which would be taking you to different professional bodies, different service providers. The idea would be, therefore, consolidate those all together.
Yeah.
Bang, here's a package. In reality, it's still supplied by 4 or 5 different businesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's in one app. And the one we normally do, is to not be as morbid, is the property flow. So it's the conveyancing solicitor who does nothing but irritate you because she or they doesn't return your calls when you've completed or exchanged. You've got the removals who forget the paperwork and the itinerary that you've sent them because it's non-digitized. You've got the estate agent who are, I won't be rude, but estate agents are varying quality. And then you've got, if you're coming out of a rental into property ownership, you've got different dependencies there on the home builder and everything else. So you've got, as you just said, 5 or 6 high value professional services that you would need to sort of on a random basis interact with in one app. So it makes your life simpler because it's just on the one app, easy to use, all done, seamless. And actually,
is this me selling my house, Stuart?
Could be selling it. It could be renting it.
But just talk me through this one, because if I've got an estate, as an estate agent, am I actually somehow booking his or her time? And how much time would I want to book of their time? Because frankly, their time is their time, not mine. Yeah.
So on the back end side, they would basically list out their services and specify and define the services that they would offer. So, for example, most people would default to an initial consultation, 30 minutes. But then after that, you would then get into actually, to do a survey, it is 60 minutes. To do a farmyard, it is 2 hours, whatever it might be. They would know their own stuff. That would be put in the back end, and then that would be republished into the app so that when you come to pick it, it's all sequenced and organized for you based on the availability. So it's clever but simple.
Mm. Okay. So it would have to accord with my availability as well. So
yes,
the estate agent's available. So basically, there's some sort of iteration, and you find the right place. And now, does that mean to say that estate agent would come and visit me, or would it be a Zoom, or would it have to be a Zoom or something?
You've got the option to do both. So you can do in person, or you can do video. So our solution's integrated with Twilio as a communication hub, and that has everything from sort of the alphanumeric SMS functionality through to the template ability of the emails and video capability. So you've got the luxury of either.
So you built an app ostensibly to try and serve nobly the NHS, and that gave you some of the raw material that you've extended into commercial opportunities. So you've aggregated potential apps or existing apps into one place. So what you're saying is you don't need to use all these different apps. And if I'm a brand marketer or a marketer for these different apps, I'd be thinking, no, I want you there because I want your data. I want to be able to impress on you various other things. But you actually draw them away from. So are you not competing with these brands?
Yes, to some degree, but obviously they would all be on our marketplace. So then they could well be featured and do upsell and cross-sell of different services. So a law firm, when we're just talking about the conveyancing example, might want to talk about power of attorney over here and family law, not necessarily property. So you've got the interest for them that they could do more on the platform or on the marketplace rather, and at the same time, they're getting the actual meeting that they desired to start with versus the pay-per-click options or the white pages, which is just discovery.
Yeah, I see. So so you are actually, because you have a marketplace, you're creating an alternative to pay-per-click. And
yes.
So I will go into pay-per-click and try and find people searching for this type of service.
Death by forms, fill in God knows whatever pages, and then get bombarded with spam.
Right. So they go onto your marketplace. Does that just look like Yellow Pages?
No, it would. It would look like. It depends. You then have the option of having subsets white labeled, if we call it that, so customized, professionalized, or it can just be sort of the neutral. We schedule it whatever brand we put the marketplace under colors. So if you look at some of the others, you've got sort of Unbiased and Bark who are in that category. Everyone just goes on Bark or they go on Unbiased. So we've got the two options there because of how we built the apps in native. You have the ability to republish as white labeled versions.
Right. So okay. So I'm going to have to ask that question again. But if I'm unbiased, then are you saying that you can click away from your app and just go into theirs?
No. So if you're on there, I'm just giving an example of that. They are the pay-per-click. They are the white page examples where you fill in forms, you then get a lead, or you then get a list of options. Whereas on ours, it's all in the one place. It's consolidated. It's already aggregated. So when you're looking for the removal firm, it's there. When you're looking for the surveyor, he, she, or they are there. It's all in the one. It's all under one roof.
So your proposition to the consumer is you don't really need to look at all these other places because they're all here. But are they all here, or is it a promise that they're going to go there? And so, is it going to be in 5 years' time they're going to be here, or how does that look for you?
So you have to be realistic about how you launch and where you launch. So you can't go into sort of a nationwide campaign without millions of go-to-market capability and sales and marketing functionality. So we would sort of envisage launching in a major city and a town that supports it. So, for example, Birmingham, 1 million population, Solihull, a couple 100,000. You've then got the pattern, Newcastle, Sunderland for Kevin, sort of thing. You know what I mean? So it twins them nicely. Manchester, Stockport. Or Sale rather. You've got to have a pattern. Establish yourself in that. Get the businesses to sign up. So circa 1,000, 2,000 businesses. And they would naturally bring with them their customers as well as the go-to-market of doing B2C as well. But you can't roll out nationwide without any sort of brand identity, brand recognition. You'd have to do it on a sort of local to regional basis and then scale from there.
It sounds interesting. And so, when are you likely to be in a position of having, say, Birmingham, for instance?
Yep. So at the moment, we're sort of onboarding service providers in Birmingham, Solihull, so as to then establish the marketplace. We're just trying to work out how many is, so sort of to your point, how many requires a marketplace. 5 isn't, 50 might be. Is it 100 to make it worthwhile, to make it valuable? In reality, it's when we secure the full sort of pre-seed funding so as to proceed. We're a self-funded bootstrapped startup, and I try and liken it to sort of landing at Heathrow. We're circling, ready to land. So we need to, we need the investment and the expertise from the angels so as to grow and scale. And certainly we're sort of ready to go, but don't have the funds to go. Hence, going for the investment.
And how much investment are you looking for?
So we're looking for 350,000 pre-seed, which is both SEIS and EIS advance assured. We would then sort of look to do a seed round sort of 9 to 12 months later because of meeting certain growth and scale milestones of just under 1 million. And then potentially in our 60-month forecast, we would do a Series A nearly a year later. But again, it's sort of finger in the air when you get to sort of 60-month forecasts on that respect, albeit it was done by a prudent accountant.
And that prudent accountant being somebody like Kevin, somebody who's probably got an idea of numbers, and what kind of level of turnover does he see this marketplace burgeoning to? Is it a sort of a, what do they call it, a unicorn?
Yeah, I mean, and Kevin will know this from how I am. You don't have any credibility coming across with those sorts of numbers. What we actually have built in is sort of high attrition, high customer acquisition cost, a negative Nelly model, which stands up to scrutiny. Because what's happened and what does happen is whoever receives the Excel and goes to drill into it, and they go, that's fictitious, that's farcical, don't believe that, don't think you're going to do that, you're sort of dead in the water before you get into, would you like to invest? So we've probably gone too far the other way and made a very sort of conservative financial model, but actually under scrutiny, it's held its own. And then you can sort of talk about, well, actually I have a background in customer success. I have 2 or 3 people I'd like to bring in to go and do that for us. And we believe we don't have that high CAC cost in month 9 and month 10 because, and they go, yeah, I can see that. But the model is sort of, as I say, worst case scenario. So we would have, and I think we were sort of 1,000 sign up businesses in year 1, 3,000 year 2, 6,000 year 3. So very conservative, with a supposed international expansion of sort of Dublin and Bray in Ireland, again, because it's the city with the demographic population size, to trigger the international expansion. But again, sort of very sensible. Don't try and do London straight away. Don't try and do
Areas considered international. I suppose it must be.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's all part of the same thing. But I mean, probably the Irish might not think it that way. But for our Irish listeners, then I'd welcome you all as part of the Greater Britain, and I really would. I think it would be nice to have you on board. But seriously, though, no, I genuinely, I can see this. You can see that as a category, it's going to compete with some behemoths. I mean, the sort of Googles of the world, because they've got this market, this search market, and people are automatically going there. What was it, 90% of the search market goes to them.
Yeah.
Now, what you're doing is creating another way to get a result, but it's the deliverables are all about time, aren't they?
Yeah. So that's the key point. So we all default to Google. Doesn't matter who you are, and anyone who says otherwise is lying. But it's actually that deliverable bit of getting the meeting, getting the appointment, getting the service you require, and that's where most fall down. We get those bits, and then it's built. It's sort of underpinned with the review and the feedback element. So the quality is there. So we're not trying to invent our own ranking or rating system and profess to be a Trustpilot or anybody else, but actually, to get that confirmation element and do what you say you're going to do is key. Otherwise, you are just another white pages with a pay-per-click offering.
You're not going to call it "we schedule it," though, are you?
No, we're not. And it's been fun and games. I'll be honest. It's been fun and games having one screen open with the DNS searcher, the other open with every variation from Greek, Latin, and every other language, ancient or otherwise, trying to think of something innovative. I think it was Kevin who came up with the next 100 days.
Because he's mad keen on planning.
Well, I will share one we've settled on, and we do own. So my son is called Rory, Rory, and actually one of our advisors came up with Rory as in raw with an I. So actually we're looking to bring to market Rory, as in ROARI. Yeah, Rory. So ROARI. So raw and then I. Yeah. So our chief marketing officer, she came up with some brilliant ideas, none of which we could afford the DNS costs of buying the .com, the .io, and all the things you have to do. But actually, Rory, we've sort of settled on, and that's favourite. Obviously, I'm completely biased because it's my son's name, but it does give us some affinity. So it'd sort of be the app would one of the apps might well be called Rory.
And of course, now you've cogitated on it a little bit. So what's the acronym stand for?
I haven't got that far yet, to be honest.
Honestly, you're useless. What can I say? I mean, you've got. That's the first thing I'd have done. I'd have written it down and said, "Well, I don't know what the answer would be, by the way." But no, that is it's you'd think it'd stand for something, but it's
does.
five letters, isn't it?
One of our advisors came up with something. I could find his and pass it off as my own homework, but I won't.
Oh, right. Well, that's fair enough. Well, you've obviously got somebody on your team that's doing a good job then. So that's okay. So you've got the .com and the .co, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we've got .co.uk, .io, and .com hasn't been used since 2012, so we'll look to purchase that, but without getting ripped off at some point. Yeah,
fair dues. And actually, .io seems to be, for those types of apps, seems to be the right thing to go to. So, okay, it must be, the sort of rollout, it must be a huge amount of processing.
You'd think so, but one of our sort of differentiators from a startup is the quality we built. We built enterprise grade from the outset. One, because we had to get on all the public sector frameworks, and two, I just firmly believe if you do it once, you do it right. You don't have to come back and revisit it. You can improve stuff, but we didn't build on a language that's for startups. We're built on sort of Java without getting too technical. Everything we've done is built for enterprise, built for scale, which has cost more, but it's worth it because, as I say, you only have to visit each area once. So we have automations built. We have the API repository all sort of ready to go for connecting. It will be very sort of simple and seamless to sign up, guest checkout, log in, whatever it might be. We have, I've said before, I have good people around me that know how these things need to work, both from a marketing and a product perspective, as well as, sort of a customer perspective. So we've got most of those documented and ready to go. It's just a case of building them out.
The marketplace fascinates me because it seems, if I'm following you right, Stuart, you're kind of like developing marketplaces for applications. So you talked about, I don't know, the moving process and estate agents and so forth. So are you thinking about all of those things where somebody's got this task and they come into your marketplace, hopefully at the beginning, and they work their way all the way through to the end? Happy customer, but yet they've not just, you've helped them all the way along. Is that the type of marketplace that you're looking for?
Well, there's different layers to it, Graham. So you've got the stickiness that you need to make an app not just get deleted after one transaction, and that's always at the back of your mind, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And actually, you've got to, if you're talking about, in our case, high value professional services that matter to people, it is mainly things around health, business, your home. And so you need to have those bundles ready and the subset flow. So property is one that always comes up. And so if you actually work out how to do that better, you get that stickiness, you get that repeat ability.
Yeah.
And for us, that is key. It's not implied in regards to you just want to use a removal firm, therefore you must use the estate agent, you must use the conveyancing solicitor. But obviously it flows so that it makes logical sense to do that. You're trying to save people time, you're trying to give people time back, and you're trying to save people money. So you're ticking the two biggest boxes: time and money. Most people care about. Yeah, and the app can do that.
You don't really give them time back, do you? Because basically, they don't. What you're really saying is that if you do it this other damn silly way, then you will waste your time. So actually, you're just not going to be. If you choose that option, then your time's going to be evaporated. Whereas our option will keep you nice and tight, because time just keeps ticking on anyway, doesn't it?
Well, if you think of how much time you'd spend Googling something and trying to find something versus how long it takes you, to make a booking under 60 seconds, to make multiple bookings under 60 seconds, so, it's the cleverness of the app to be able to do these things. That's, for a parent, that's a lot of time saved. For a business person, their time has a cost rate. It doesn't matter which user case you look at, it saves them time, or it's an opportunity cost, whichever, you want to look at.
Right. Okay.
I guess you're taking one thing out that I'd find key in any of these processes, though, Stuart. And a lot of the times, I don't buy a service unless I've been recommended to it. Normally, I'm not talking about Trustpilot or anything like that. I'm talking about personal recommendations.
Yes.
Your app, presumably in that selling a house situation, is going to throw me up an estate agent, a removal firm, a solicitor, or maybe it's going to give me a choice of 2 or 3. But my first thing would be, I need a removal firm. I haven't used one for 20 years. ask a few people I know that have moved lately. Yeah. What do you think of them?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Get around that one?
Well, hopefully the way in which we do the review and feedback will give you some level of comfort, but also the personal recommendation bit will be built in, because that is important. I'm no different. I had a good experience moving from one property to another. I would consider using those firms again. And similarly, I've had a bad experience where a TV's been scratched or something. I've never used them again. I wouldn't recommend them. So we within the review and feedback, you need to have the ability across service providers to recommend peers without being too cuddly. You end up with an estate agent and the conveyancing firm being tied. That wouldn't be necessarily permitted because they're within the same building, right? But actually a recommendation from peer to peer would be, and it would give a bit more sort of gravitas to the referral.
I guess in a way that it's almost like a member get member thing, isn't it? I mean, a member dragging somebody into your marketplace. So effectively, if you want somebody in there, then maybe there's a route to doing that through the white heat of customers.
Yeah, I mean, it's most business we do from similar to what Kevin said, through picking people or inviting people in is referral or recommendation based, and that is good enough for us, because it's he, she, or they who's referred X, Y, and Z in. Is that it's their word. That's absolutely fine. And to be honest, we've worked under that proviso, and therefore it must be in the app too. So it will be.
Interesting. Is this something that would work particularly well at a local level? I mean, you mentioned Dublin and Bray and Solihull, and Solihull's not exactly small, is it? It's a couple of 100,000 people, but I mean, but it is quite a different area from Birmingham as a whole. But
yes,
is this a local service, or is this not a local service?
It's meant to put back into the local community, ideally. So if we caveat sort of Kevin's referral recommendation, if I've had the same solicitor for 20 years, I'm not going to change. There's that category, which is, a given. But yes, it's trying to put back into local. I can't remember if it was Northumberland County Council had the model where it's the pound in and there's the 34p stays in the community. That's well quoted in most places. There's also if you look at the social element of marketplaces, there's things like in my neighborhood and stuff where it's the personal recommendations from the gardener to the general handyman, right? There's that element of local that matters to people now. It probably didn't 2 or 3 years ago. But if you could spend local, not necessarily artesian, but if you could spend local, I think most people have an affinity with that. For example, Rory goes to play tennis in Wimborne on a Sunday, and then we go to like the farm shop and buy the eggs. We go and buy the honey from there. You go and buy the milk from there, and you feel like you're contributing back into the community. I think that's become more prevalent, certainly in the last 12, 18 months. I don't think it held true prior to the pandemic.
No, I would actually ascribe it as much as anything to Brexit, because I think there has been a difference, a different way of, by British sort of thing. I think there is, whether you agree with that or not, I think that probably is a trigger. There's no question at all that the COVID pandemic has also enhanced it. But I do think we as people have had more reasons to fear outside and more reasons to trust inside. And I think that basically is maybe a feature or a factor that you would want to build your app or at least emphasize your app around, because I think there is a real change to that level. And frankly, you know what? If mind you, if we lose electricity, then your app's useless, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't answer that any other way. One thing we have had some traction with.
There isn't a paper version then. I mean, you're not going to put a paper version out.
I'm paperless as a business. I can't stand wasting paper. I can't stand single-use plastic. And my two biggest bugbears. I do try and make, I can't remember where I was on holiday, but I ended up, eating squid or calamari or octopus, and there's plastic in the fish, and you think, right, we need to do something. But that's digressing slightly. So from a local perspective, we have got some, positive traction with BCP Council. We're R&D consortium members of their Smart Place, and they are trying to do far more local, and they're quite pioneering in this space. There's a lot on smart cities and 5G and great stuff around there, but actually empowering residents, empowering locals to do more locally, but give them the 2020 plus tools to do them, not act in the 1950s, is the way in which that's going to be done. So there's a big move into that space. And again, because our product, our solution is sort of public sector worthiness, we can also offer that solution too, where it would be white labeled as a local council.
Well, I've got to say, Stuart, that the biggest party that you'll ever have is when the NHS come crawling on their knees back to your organisation to say we'd really like your business.
I'd love that to happen to make a difference, but I doubt it's gonna happen.
It might be a while. It might be a while. We might be all a bit older.
I suppose the frustration.
The NHS purchase things, and I can see what I can cynically see how Stuart didn't get in there in the first place. And I can see why the scenario you're just explaining will probably never happen either. Yeah. But Stuart, we're the Next 100 Days podcast, and a large amount of our audience have had the corporate escape story, as all of us have had. And we've talked about kind of the first 100 days after you've left corporate. We've talked before about that pivot position and what happens in the 100 days around that. But you're sitting in an interesting one here. You've got to that stage that you've now discovered you've got so far, and you need more money. You're at that seed place. What does the next 100 days look like from that perspective? What's in your next 100 days?
Lots of LinkedIn stalking of supposed pre-seed angel investors and VCs that might well be interested. So, being smart with who we're targeting, being smart with who we're pitching to, and really putting a shift in to try and get our offering out there and get the interest. It's just making the most of the hours in the day to try and get something converted.
This looks like a piece of text that Peter Jones would follow on Dragon's Den.
I think there's a number of factors here, and raising the money is obviously key to it. But finding those people who are going to be enthused by it.
Yeah,
I would say your biggest challenge with those investors is to make it clear what problem you're solving. And not just today, and not, as I say, not just in 5 years' time. It's not gravy tomorrow. It's or jam tomorrow. It's what's going to fill you up now. How are you going to get the first bits of money? So the more you can elucidate that proposition as a real, tangible thing that both the sellers and the buyers, because that's what you're really talking about. You're talking about creating a marketplace. You are going up against some very, very stiff competition. And, I'm sure they'll ignore you at first, but after a while they won't.
No, I mean, I'm a realist. So, I fully understand that blockchain, crypto, AI, startups are sexy. They're the ones that people are naturally interested in, the fintech space. And therefore, you're not going to catch the eye of people who are looking at that subset. Similarly, on the sort of clean tech, green tech space, people have more of an ethical warrant to look at B Corps and those startups. So we are, from being a pre-seed round that has X amount of community to go and target, it's then a subset of that community. So you've got to be realistic with who you can target, who you can speak to. And that's where I suppose it comes down to your advisors and who you've got within your network to make that difference. We have, the feedback we've had thus far is this is something that can actually scale and grow. It's deadly simple, very effective. And I can see it being around in 5, 10, 15 years time because of how you can mature the product. And for that, people are interested. The issue is you're only going for a third of a market in regards to, pre-seed investors are not seed investors. And then within the pre-seed community, and if you are lucky enough, there are some VCs that do pre-seed, but most just want you on an accelerator or an incubator and take 51% on the second day. It's a very niche. So you're told to go niche down on your product. And then at the same time, for an investor community, it's niche. So for example, having got the SEIS and the EIS Advanced Assurance, which was like an accounting qualification in its own right, you're excluding non-UK investors because you haven't gone and done what they need to see. So again, that's something else we might need to look at. But, I was being flippant with the sort of 100 days, spending it all on LinkedIn, but that might well be something we need to examine, is how do we appeal to non-UK investors? Because whilst the SEIS and the EIS flag is fantastic, and it's the first thing I ever get message back, not is your solution any good? It's, have you got advance assurance? Yes. Okay, I'll talk to you. I'm only talking to UK investors. So that's something we probably need to look at as a sort of reflective of the last 2 weeks of my marketing campaign.
Well, it seems to me, Kevin, that Stuart's got a huge amount of opportunity, but I think also a huge amount of work to get the investors on board, but then to build the team even more than you've got already. And then basically, well, let's see. I mean, I think, it's what happens in the middle of all that market. It creates so many different avenues for you as a company. But if you're creating marketplaces, it's almost like you've got almost like a godlike control of things, and a real opportunity for you as a company. But I what can I say? All the best.
Thank you. I think there is an element of luck to it. And one thing I will say is we've been very lucky to be part of Startup to Stand Up since autumn last year. So exited founders, exited entrepreneurs, and they've offered real advice and insight and helped introduce us to people and sort of been able to do some flag waving for us. And I think that's probably one thing that's not necessarily available to aspiring entrepreneurs or wannabe founders, is that support from people who have a t-shirt or several t-shirts in the cupboard. And that's made a massive difference to us, because youth, like I described myself, I feel we failed from the public sector approach. We've actually achieved quite a lot of things, and you should celebrate those successes. But because I'm very driven, very focused, and believe we should be here, it's actually taking a step back and reflecting on what you have achieved. And they've been very good at saying, it's like, discovering for gold or trying to find a diamond. You might be one or two scraps left to try and find that diamond. And it's just a case of, working out a better way of doing it. And they've certainly opened our eyes to doing things differently, as well as provide a sort of a wraparound support in that. And we've appointed our CMO from that community as well. So we've been lucky to have better people around us than we probably did previously. And that's made a big difference. As I say, I try and use my 2 ears and 1 mouth in that proportion. And that's definitely helped, because I've never done this before. So actually, if somebody has and they've got a t-shirt and they've got the nice bank account, then you sort of need to listen to him or her or them. Otherwise, you're wasting their time and yours.
Well, Kevin, Stuart's impressed me, but as given that you kind of knew him a few years ago, has he impressed you today?
Yes, he has. Very much. Very much. I can see all of that energy that I've always known Stuart has being directed to something very specific. And I can see it as being something very fulfilling. And I think Stuart has found his natural place in life. But I'd say 2 things reflecting on what Stuart just said, and probably 2 biggest lessons for me over recent years. Number 1 is there's no such thing as failure. There's only learning. And that's the way you've got to treat the NHS and the pivot. Not a failure. It's a learning exercise, and it's put you in a hell of a better place by having gone through it. And number 2, and this is the big one that I'm learning more and more as we're running Grow CFO, and we're operating a mentoring service for people, finance people that want to get to the next level. And I've really, really learned the value of mentoring, the value of having somebody next to you that's done what you want to do, that's got the t-shirt, that's done it before, knows the ins and outs. There's any amount of executive coaches out there, C-suite coaches, but you don't want generalist help. You want specific help. If you're trying to found an app-based business, you want a mentor who's run an app-based business. If you want to be a successful CFO, you want a mentor who's already been a successful CFO. It's a big, big accelerator.
I would just, sorry, Graham.
No, was going to take one issue about the app-based mentor. I think there's a dissonance in my mind with that. I mean, I read recently one of the things about Dan Kennedy. One of the things he said, Kevin, is that he comes across these people who say, I'm an internet marketer. I'm in the internet marketing business. Now, that's just a media.
Yeah.
An app is just a media. You're not in the app market.
No.
What you're in is, I don't want you whether I can control your time market or whatever it is. I can. That's the market that you're in. I might be mischaracterizing your market, but I think in my view, think less about the app, because you'll get that bit right anyway. There's technical people who can do all that kind of crap. But at the end of the day, for me, it's the focus on the market and what you're bringing to people, businesses who can see money coming in because they're in your marketplace, and the consumer who can see the opportunity to get their stuff done effectively without the worry that they're getting done, because frankly there isn't enough in the marketplace, because people like choice. If you can get that circled, then you're going to be onto an absolute winner.
Yeah. Yep. I don't disagree. I'll just say one thing to Kevin's point, because I think there is a demarcation between coach and mentor, and certainly having mentors that have entrepreneurial pedigree and have been there, seen, they're done it on t-shirt. That's fantastic. It doesn't detract from obviously the more the coaching side through your corporate career that we've touched on, whereby and Kevin's on this call, where you have somebody like Kevin who can provide that value throughout your career. And actually, I lost a couple of really important people in my life from a coaching perspective in the last sort of 2 years while I've been on this journey. And whilst it's very devastating, you miss the value they bring to what you're trying to achieve. But actually, others have stepped in and stepped up, which has been fantastic. And you can't undervalue their contribution, because at times when you need that advice, you need that sounding board from somebody who you respect because they've achieved X, Y, and Z, albeit it might be in a different field. Their sort of authority on something gives you the confidence to proceed, and certainly if you've got a spectrum of support via coaches and mentors, then I think you're in a really strong place to be as successful as you can be. If you don't, then sort of go out and reconnect with people that you think could perform those roles, because the value they bring is huge.
Wow. Stuart, all I would like to say is thank you. Good luck, but also thank you for being on the next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, Graham, that's a corporate escape story that's a little bit different to the normal one that we have. I don't think we've ever talked to anybody who's out there in the world of building an app that's going to revolutionize the way you and I might do things.
It's got huge potential if the probably localized marketplaces surface, and then they get another two things right. One, which is the number of service providers, and the other one being the number of individuals interested in purchasing from those service providers, and then all these sort of lining up appointments and all the rest of that, all that good, all that's very good. So for me, I think he's onto something, but there's a huge amount to do. But Google wasn't started in a day, and they've evolved. But the focus on applications seems to me really clever, and I think look, they've got a chance, and I think they just need an investor to see that, and then they can get off and running. So,
and it'll be really interesting in maybe 6 months, 12 months time to bring Stuart back onto the podcast and see what happened.
It would, and I think from my point of view, I think he's coming up with something that is, it takes you a bit to think through just the magnitude of how it might change the way we do things, and I think that's the deep down. That would be the concern I would have, that how do you make that big space-like thing simple enough for people who are simple, generally simple, but also apathetic and also doing things in a different way. All of that they have to have a story which is going to transform all the things that they're doing now into a thing that they could potentially do really well in. And there's almost like a use case, I think, that needs to be required. Once you get to that point, then as I said, they've got a real chance.
Absolutely. So we'll watch this space and see what happens, Graham.
We will. And again, thank you to Stuart, and all the best with his services. Today, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.